I want to personally thank everyone for joining us today. I know we're getting towards the end of the year. Can you believe it's the end of 2024 already? So I know everyone's very busy. So really appreciate you taking the hour to join us today. We have a fantastic topic. So let's jump in with both feet and get started. Let me first introduce myself. I'm Roger Mazzella. I'm the Senior Product Manager at the Cute Group in charge of the medical industry. And before I introduce my esteemed panelists, let's set the stage a little bit and why we chose this topic and kind of why we're here. So platform engineering was listed by Gartner as one of the top 10 strategic technologies of 2024 and has emerged a way for medical device manufacturers to simplify, streamline embedded software development and make it more efficient. So what happened is that on the heels of that, April this year, 2024, Cute Group commissioned Forrester Consulting to evaluate the adoption of engineering platforms for embedded software platforms. You know, what Forrester did is they interviewed 317 decision makers and influencers responsible for the platform engineering strategy of their organizations and the current state of platform engineering in the embedded software sector. And 1/4 of those respondents were from the medtech industry. So we're kind of taking that and that is available. It's publicly available, that report. I encourage you to download it. I believe we share it. We have shared it on LinkedIn through the Cute Group. So follow the Cute Group and you can download that study. So let me go ahead now and shift and introduce our esteemed panelists. These gentlemen are thought leaders and industry experts from the medical device industry. First, Roshi Francis, Senior Vice President of Research and Development at GE Healthcare. Vignesh Shetty, Vice President of AI and Software at Medtronic, and Mustafa Poonawalla, Vice President of Program Management and Strategy Realization at BD. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time today and joining us for this great discussion.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
All right, so let's let the audience into a little bit of some background here. You know, this isn't the first time we've spoken. Obviously, we do some prep. We talk with each other. I meet the panelists and we say, hey, what do we really want to discuss in the 45 minutes we have with you today? And the first thing I got was questions. I thought I was the host and the question and the kind of the panel moderator, and I got to ask the question, hey, Roger, what's platform engineering to you? And I provided an answer, and it was more of an engineering specific answer because my background's in engineering. But I think that really showed us that, hey, I think everyone has an idea of what platform engineering is in their own mind, depending on what their background is or their perspective. So why don't we first set the stage? Mustafa, I'll start with you. How are we defining and contextualizing platform engineering, and why is it important to the medical device community?
Yeah, thank you, Roger. So, you know, what I'll say is, look, in its very basic sense, right? Platform engineering is the ability to develop a reusable framework that can be used for building a life cycle of products, right? Engineering is a small part of it. There are many, many elements that go into it, including quality, including customer satisfaction, et cetera, that make it a discipline. But at the very basic, you know, as we continue to experience capital challenges, longer life cycles of products, et cetera, it becomes an element of how products are built so that the elements that are used in version 1 of the product can be used to continue to extend and make the product reusable and scalable throughout its life cycle.
Excellent, excellent. Roshi, Vignesh, anything to add to that?
So I was the one, Roger, who asked you that question. Sorry about
I didn't want to put you on the spot and accuse you, by the way. But yeah, so it was Roshi who did.
The reason why I thought it was important context is because when I was in the trenches of engineering, I was sharing the same view that Mustafa did. Didn't think that platforms mean anything else. But then I realized that depending on the context and as we get closer and closer to business circles, platforms can mean different things to different people. So number one, exactly what Mustafa said, it's a set of reusable foundational technology components that can be used to build a portfolio of products. And not just to build it and expand on it by saying that we can also use it to deploy, streamline deployment of products, especially as we get into digital kind of medical devices, and also operate those products. So develop, deploy, operate those products. So that's kind of the definition that I think we're going to be using. But just to put a little bit more context in, sometimes product management, in product management circles I have used in medical devices, I have seen platforms being referred to as an initial introduction of a product that has a long runway through updates and upgrades. After a product manager would say, this is an introduction of a platform. In business circles, I've seen business leaders talk about platforms in the context of platform economies. We talk about platform companies that essentially create digital technology frameworks that bring consumers and producers together and create a network effect and create really new monetization models. Those are also applicable for medical devices. And last but not the least, platform engineering is essentially now becoming a sub-discipline of cloud software engineering, which is focused on that deployment and operation of software, right? It sounds very much like DevOps, but not the operational aspects of it, but really kind of the technology that allows self-serve tools and APIs to developers. But in the remainder of this context, I'm going to go with Mustafa's definition, say these are the technology components, whether it's hardware or software, whatever span we're using it for. That's what I think I'm going to be talking about.
Right. Now, I'm glad you brought the business aspect into that, and you did tease cloud, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Vignesh, anything to add?
The way I would describe it, and I think Mustafa and Roshi covered a lot of the key points, is if you also think about it from a customer's lens as to what would they define if they were to talk to any of our companies, how would they expect platform engineering to manifest itself? Is they would look at it through a lens of interoperability and regulatory compliance. So what they would expect is companies like us fundamentally offer a platform, which is really a set of standard interfaces to communicate more effectively and facilitate exchange of both the data, information, or insights between devices and healthcare systems, right? Because that is fundamentally what creates what we call a cohesive ecosystem that enables or accelerates innovation and drives compliance, whether that's regulatory, quality, and fundamentally at the end of it, or enhances the overall quality of medical care via devices. Right? That's how they would be.
I think you hit the nail on that. Overall quality of medical care. Isn't that what we're all striving for, right? So I'm glad you did mention that. All right, now we're going to get the audience involved. So Carla, we'd love to poll the audience now. We want to hear from them. So audience, based on this definition, are you using platform engineering? We'd like to get kind of an idea of if you're using it, if this is kind of new to you. As we're going to give a minute or so to have that answer, I'll refer back to the Forrester study. About 90% of the respondents agreed that their platform is a strategic factor for the success of the business. So the 317, the majority of them said, yeah, this is really a strategic initiative. So I'll go ahead and give another maybe 10 seconds or so. Great. So look, we have the respondents come in. 63% of the audience said they use platform engineering, and it's majority, but still there's about 36% that it's kind of new to. So Roshi, this seems like a simple concept, but what prevents people from doing this effectively?
It's a great question, right? So what's so hard about identifying a set of foundational technologies that we know every medical device have to do, and building them and deploying it? But in my experience I've had a lot of experience with platforms that have been really successful, that have actually resulted in turnaround of a business because it was based on a platform strategy that we used to refresh the entire portfolio in a very rapid fashion, introducing some really differentiating capabilities that made us win with our customers, and really substantially improved the way we helped our customers to deliver patient care. And I've also been directly part of a lot of platform initiatives that didn't work so well, right? So from my experience, I would say the reason why the platform concept is hard to get right, I've seen sort of 4 buckets of problems. Okay, so I'll just refer to them very, very quickly. One is technical. The idea of being able to find these common components that can serve multiple products sounds very simple, but do you have a really, really solid roadmap? How do you anticipate those needs and make sure that the engineering of the platform components are done just right? If you go overboard, you can over-engineer, you can underwhelm your consumers because you're not doing enough for anyone, right? So that's kind of a technical, really difficult challenge. The second challenge I would say is cultural. And that comes from the fact that maybe there are a lot of failed platform attempts in our companies, and people have PTSD, right? It didn't work last time. Why do we depend on this team or this initiative this time? So there is a lot of cultural aspects. And part of the cultural aspect also comes from the fact that, program management teaches, especially medical devices, I think in general, teaches us to remove dependencies. Platforms introduce complex dependencies. How do you manage them? Because if I'm self-sufficient within my team, I'm controlling my own destiny. Now all of a sudden, there is another team that I have to depend on. And the third aspect is kind of hard to operationalize platforms, because usually if you're doing this well, you're trying to do this across a large portfolio of products. Oftentimes that is between different business units. It really stresses our organizational muscles, right? To be able to say, hey, how do I cater to all of these different needs who may have slightly different priorities? And aligning them is really tough. Aligning them on the roadmap is really tough. And for all of us who have been part of this, we know that it's a very dynamic process. The product priorities change, the product timeline sometimes change. The platform development itself is a very, very challenging process. So how do you bring it all together? So without really having an operational maturity, as I call it, around how you really drive platform, within the company, beyond just taking, building a whole bunch of technology building blocks and throwing it over the fence and, figuring out if someone is going to use it. That's just basic levels of platform. That's not going to get to this change that Vignesh was talking about earlier, in a way that dramatically transforms the way we actually operate and bring our solutions to our customers. We're not going to be able to do that if we just got stuck in that first level of platforming where you're throwing over technology over the wall. So that's what I call as operational maturity. And the last one, and probably really most important, I would say, is financial. Oftentimes when we do this, when we're thinking about whether to invest in a product in a medical device, it's relatively easy. It's not easy. It's easier because the ROI, how we calculate them, whether there is a market for it, how do we think about whether that's the right thing for our customers? There are established practices. When you think about the investment that you need to put into platforms, what's the ROI? And oftentimes the cost sits in one part of the organization, the benefit is spread across multiple parts of the organization. Try having that conversation with the CFO to say, we think this is a good idea. Well, is it really a good idea? Yeah, that is going to allow me to approve a significant investment and carry that on for a significant number of years in the future, because this is not a short-term 6 months.
Yeah, we're talking 10 years in the market or more, right?
Well, those are the challenges, Roger. I think there are a lot that I can go on, but those are the 4 categories of challenges that I've seen.
Well, look, you called out Vignesh. I want to go to you next. So how do you see this at Medtronic? As you mentioned some of this already.
Both in Medtronic and my previous stints, and Roshi and I worked together. So I can vouch for the fact that when I started doing platforming, I had a lot more hair and more of it was black, right? But Roshi touched upon a lot of the key points. The only one thing I would add is one of the things I've learned, which is particularly nuanced in the context of medical devices and healthcare and more broadly, is sometimes you see an impedance mismatch, or what I would call lack of high agency in the talent we hire. Because what I've learned over the time is it sort of dovetails into the cultural point Roshi touched upon, but the need to hire go-getters who are, as opposed to frustrated geniuses who've done amazingly well in platforming in other industries, right? Both of them are talented, but you need somebody who also has the patience and the resilience to navigate both the ambiguity and the challenges of a highly regulated industry like the medical device industry. When it comes to platforming, in general, there's a slow start and there's a hockey stick. But when you couple that with longer timelines for product development in the medtech space, higher regulations, hybrid deployment models, you need a mix of cloud and on-prem for it to work. The platform mindset has to evolve, even amongst folks who've done it successfully in the past. So being able to ensure that people have the ability to navigate through that, have the resilience, becomes critical.
Yeah, like you said, you have to get go-getters that embrace it all, embrace the process, embrace the benefits, embrace the challenges, right? Mustafa, anything to add that with your experiences at BD or your other companies you work with?
Yeah, Roshi. So thank you, Roger. Right, and just building off of what Roshi and Vignesh said, I will accentuate a few points, right? Look, when we think about what I call accidental platform engineering, right, which is not a deliberate approach, it can be easy, right? It builds upon a Frankenstein of products that are then we spend millions of dollars and effort maintaining through its life cycle. The reality is products have a very long lifespan in the field, right? We're looking at products that have been out there for multiple decades that have to be maintained, et cetera. What's difficult, and to Roshi and Vignesh's point, is the deliberate aspect of it, because it does require companies to be clear about the strategy that they're embarking on. It also requires clarity on the future aspects of how a product would tend to evolve, right? Looking around the corner, anticipating the product roadmap and how it ties to technology roadmaps, right? That's one of the spaces that is tremendously lacking, right? Companies struggle with putting together product roadmaps and technology roadmaps that tie back to that, that lay out the runway of the product. The other aspect, which is extremely important, and I would actually bubble it up, is investment, right? And I think Roshi touched upon that. Look, the point is, it's not going to be cheap, right? It's going to require an investment upfront that will pay off in the long run. We've seen companies struggle with and accelerate time to market at the expense of many of these concepts that are necessary in order to build a robust platform to build off of, right? As soon as there's competitive pressure, as soon as there is business pressure, et cetera, the time to market aspects become paramount, which end up compromising the elements of platform and the investments that are needed. And finally, it's being able to realize some of these more, some of the less tangible benefits of platform engineering, right? Customer satisfaction, the ease of the improvement in our regulatory and compliance landscape, the improvement of quality, et cetera, right? I've yet to see a good characterization of how cost of quality or cost of regulatory compliance or the benefit of customer satisfaction is built into the early strategy realization of a product, right? So all of those elements make it extremely difficult.
Yeah, and I could tell you, with my company being a vendor to companies like yours, we're working with partners trying to pre-architect a lot of the hardware OS application layer and present that to customers to try to help facilitate that, and maybe ease that investment up front, right? So yeah, we're starting to see that from the vendor side, trying to enable companies like yours to then pass that value on to the customers themselves.
May I add one thing?
Go ahead. Absolutely.
Mustafa triggered this thought in me. So, oftentimes when we started with platform engineering, we're not doing really sexy stuff. You just mentioned this, Roger. You mentioned, operating system, UI, et cetera, et cetera. When you think about products and value propositions for investments in a large company at the right levels, they are just outstanding set of innovations that has the potential to change healthcare in some way. And here comes across a large number of products, some kind of a platform initiative. That sounds not very sexy because most of them are not. Okay, this is also goes to the challenge of how do you attract people and staff them appropriately to do some of these really important things that need to be standardized, that really influence customer satisfaction and experience. But at the same time, it may not be that sexy. Oftentimes, when we start out, we find out the non-sexy things and solve that problem, and then you kind of work your way up the value chain, right? And so the challenge is, are we committed? Are we committed to kind of identify those things and make COEs or platform teams that are able to manage that problem for us, but at the same time keep that team motivated at the same time, not just funded, invested in, but also motivated because they're not going to be subservient to the product teams that happen to be closer to customers. It's really important for us to make sure that they're elevated in the organization, Otherwise these things are not going to be very successful.
Great points. And it's funny, we had a question come in, and I think this is a good segue to the next question I have. And Vignesh, I'm going to start with you. So what I wanted to ask was, the best practices that your company's implementing, employing, looking into, I'm sure there's a lot of organizational things that we talked about, a lot of getting cross-functional teams to participate, right? Lots of stakeholders. The platform simplifies design, but you might have more stakeholders, that you need to inquire and weigh in on the design and the benefits and stuff like that. And so, that question I wanted to ask, and with the best practices, the specific question came in from our audience that would we be able to provide more technical details on the specific standards, templates, and APIs that effective engineering platforms should include. So some of those best practices, but with whatever detail you can provide on top of that, we'd love to hear you share.
Sure. So let me just try and break it down because I think it's a multi-pronged question. The first part was at Medtronic, for instance, I think what we've adopted is what the platform's called Able. It's an ecosystem, really. At the very outset, the goal was to create a platform for first approach for both applications and workflows. And the intent was to create really two things, right? One was an interoperability layer, because every system is part of a larger ecosystem. In our case, we engage with systems of records, right? Whether those are EMRs, those are PACS systems, those are surgical planning systems, you've got to be able to interface with them. So how do you create an interoperability layer with those systems of record? And then you also create an engagement layer with customers so that you can try and fundamentally make three things better, right? You want to be able to improve the efficiency, the efficacy, and the experience of their surgical workflow. So that's kind of the North Star of how you define what to prioritize. The second thing we did is we engaged early with stakeholders cross-functionally, both internal to the company and external, and to try to hone in on the value exchange model. And I'll tell you what, I'll delve a little bit more into that. So Able really focuses on the meta network effect, to I think Roshi's point earlier, around those three E's, right? How do we drive increased efficiency, efficacy, and better surgical workflow, as opposed to other platforms, which also are incredibly important, but they focus on direct interactions between the users themselves. That's the exchange of value, for example, for social media platforms. That's not the focus for Able. So honing on what it is and what it's not with stakeholders becomes very critical, because ultimately the realization was we have a large installed base and customers rely on our ability to distill the wisdom of the best surgeons and the lab reps and raise the standard of care for patients, right? So that's one thing that we've fundamentally done. Now, in terms of what details we as you take it down to the next level of detail, it's about, for instance, our quality management system. One of the things we had to do differently was we have an incredibly successful pipeline of what we call large capital, big equipment that we offer to customers, surgeons, whether that's robotic systems, navigation systems, imaging systems like O-arms. But as we start to build a platform, our quality management system now had to be tailored to support both large capital as well as software as a medical device and even non-medical devices, which are very distinct or streamlined.
Yes.
Right? This enables faster, more efficient development cycles. The other thing that we looked at was the metrics on how we measure value. So things like lifetime value, LTV, customer acquisition costs became incredibly important. So we started to think about how do we leverage external ecosystems of startups, even hyperscalers that now already have relationships with hospital CIOs to enhance and build on our existing market reach, and then fundamentally see how easy or hard is it for existing customers to accrue new value, as well as new customers to be able to deploy and manage the entire life cycle cost of the application with and without a platform. The last thing that we did differently is we started to do what we call organizational bar raising across Medtronic, and which is really hiring small teams, think about it, 6 to 8 people who worked natively on platforms, both cloud and on-premise, and I've learned the art, to my earlier point, of implementing scalable mechanisms that can sort of match up to the regulatory rigor of the healthcare systems, and then implement governance where possible through code, but then complemented by nuanced human judgment, where you've got to deal with exceptions and escalations. So that's really how you sort of build good decision-making muscles, especially for decisions that are hard to reverse or highly consequential. That's how I would sort of describe, the changes we've made in response to platforming in general at Medtronic.
Mhm. Mustafa, anything to add? Again, we're looking at, the overall best practices and efficiencies, trying to drive that with this platform engineering strategy.
Yeah, I'll add a different lens to it, right? And I'm going to build off of what Roshi said previously about program management, sometimes becoming a barrier to platform engineering. And it's important to realize that, we need to step away from the traditional program management aspects that focus on triple constraints, right? It's not about triple constraints, right? That triangle is a myth, as I would say, right? There is a third dimension to it that gets lost, which is the value that program management and that we're bringing. And quality is at the center of all of that, right? So the point is really changing the paradigm to look at value realization as opposed to the traditional program management techniques and arts of delivering a product or a project on time, within cost, etc. Right? That value is first articulated by, how is what I'm doing today going to benefit my end customer, right? Keeping the customer first is paramount. Irrespective of what sexy technologies we apply, those are irrelevant unless you are realizing a value and delivering a piece of value to your end customer, right? Be that the patient, be that a clinician, define it in an appropriate manner, define the value, and then stay focused on delivering that value, right, along every step of the way. The decision-making aspects become critical, right? You need to stop decision spin, right? Get to quick decisions. They may not be the right ones, that continue to build on incremental value, and then revisit and reiterate on a frequent basis, right? Now, this will also result in revisiting our portfolios. So again, as I go back to program management and portfolio management practices, portfolio management is not an annual exercise, right? It is a frequently visited exercise that revisits what we're doing based on the overall value that is being delivered, and then making tough decisions to stop, start, continue aspects in light of that overall value delivery.
Roshi, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll stress on maybe the business strategy one that I think Mustafa also brought up earlier, right?
Yeah.
It's if the platform engineering initiatives are driven in engineering circles, it's not going to give us the required benefits. It has to be a core part of our business strategy, which means that we have to have business processes, right, that are synchronized. It starts with that product portfolio view and the roadmap, and it needs to be clear. That's fundamental to platform success. If you don't have a portfolio and if you don't have a technology plan that supports that portfolio evolution, it seems very simple for me to say, but it's actually very hard to get that right in the company, especially as you become bigger and bigger and you have multiple business units and all these things. So that's the number one thing. So don't think of it as engineering. I think our best practices or things where we have seen success is when it was not an engineering thing, and it was definitely a cross-functional thing, and there was a concept of platform product management that we layered on top of it, and then there is a set of business processes that we said, here are the ones that we want to invest in, here is why. And oftentimes it's not just around engineering productivity. It is a side effect of platforming, but if we are doing this for engineering productivity, I would say we're not harnessing the power of platform. It has to fundamentally change, to Vignesh's point, it has to change the way our customers experience our product portfolio and how it interacts with their systems and other products and data and sensors, et cetera, et cetera. And if you do that really well, that's what our customers are looking for from us. So think about that platform strategy through the business lens and outside in customer perspective, rather than thinking about this as an engineering productivity exercise, and definitely not as just as a value chain productivity benefit. Those are all true, but when done right, it actually changes the nature of the innovations that we're going to do, that we're going to bring to market, and of course, it improves the pace at which those innovations are built to the market. So one thing I want to hit on the one more thing is this is important in medical devices. Ultimately, we touch patients' lives in some way or the other. Quality is paramount. When we are bringing those people that Vignesh mentioned earlier, people who have done platforms, people who have done traditional products, it is really important for us to bring those kind of diverse experiences together. The best platform engineers sometimes are coming from the industry who may have had technological experiences when they are matched with people who have done medical device products, because there's a lot of experience that need to come in. Because think about this, it's a foundational set of capabilities. If we get the quality wrong in that foundational capability, it has serious implications on a portfolio, not just on a single product. We oftentimes we're over-indexing on what are the benefits from platforms. Of course, there are benefits. If we get that wrong, though, we're going to shut down a business, and hopefully just that, and not leak that into causing problems for our patients in the market. So it's really important that quality rigor and experience of having gone through a product lifecycle experience and bringing that rigor back to platform engineering is so important. That's one of the key things that we have done differently.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the end customer, because I think when people think of platform engineering, me being a product manager, we think about the internal benefits, right? But it's so much more powerful if now it reflects on benefits for the end customer. And you and Mustafa both mentioned quality, so I'm going to go to Mustafa first with the next question. By the way, gentlemen, we have about 5 minutes or so until we open up questions. So I want to get to a few more here. Over half the respondents, Mustafa, to our study saw platform engineering as a way to meet high quality standards. We're talking, this last question, quality. We want to meet these high quality standards more effectively. How do you see platform engineering impacting your end product, end customer? So this just really, Roshi, you set the table and provide a great segue. Okay, so we're talking about this end customer thing. Okay, what are some of those benefits? If we can elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, so look, when platform engineering, when done right, is not about R&D. It's not about engineering anymore. It's about the ability to manufacture a product in the most effective manner. It's about the product delivering to the highest quality aspirations that are laid out in the most effective manner. It's about the product delivering value to their customers in the most effective manner, etc. So all of those aspects, right? They're sometimes called ilities, right? Or the non-functional requirements of any product become paramount in case of platform engineering, which also makes it extremely difficult, right? Because you have to now anticipate and build these non-functional requirements, ilities, etc., right into the product at the start of it, right? The quality foundations, I think all of us have touched upon this, right? Roshi, Vignesh, etc. It is important to think about the implications of products not done right, and those then being exacerbated as that product continues to build and gain acceptance in the market. The other element, right, that we sometimes tend to overlook is the fact that platform engineering can have a can provide a significant competitive advantage, right? It can create stickiness for a product by extending its life, by extending the value, by extending the feature set, etc., that are brought to customers. It can also help with creating defensive barriers, right, that a product has to other entries and so on. This is by smart feature design, smart analytics, smart engineering, etc., that can go in, that can be then easily extended as the product evolves through its life cycle. So what I'll summarize is it's important to keep in mind all of the non-functional, all of the ilities, build that into the product definition at the start, continue to monitor that through in-process metrics so that we don't lose sight of those elements, and those then reap much more benefits than the engineering by itself.
Excellent. Vignesh, Roshi, anything to add?
I would definitely say quality is table stakes, and platforming actually accelerates that. Because if you think again of the Able platform, why is it that customers like to engage with it? It's because they rely on our ability, given the number of interactions we have with surgeons, given the size of the footprint, can the platform allow them to distill the wisdom of the best surgeons, the best lab reps, and then be able to disseminate that information across the board, democratize that effectively, right? And raise the standard of care for patients worldwide. That fundamentally is the key promise that our customers are expecting of us, and that's what we strive to deliver. That is quality, both at the individual patient level, to try and do no harm, right? But also be able to fundamentally raise the floor of the standard of care across the world by being able to create a distribution channel that's more effective. And platforms allow for that because of the economies of scale, fundamentally. So that's one thing that I would definitely talk about. The other thing is, again, goes back to, I think you also touched upon, what's the ROI, right? How do you measure?
Right, right. That's the difficult part, right? Where are those metrics? Sure.
Exactly. So fundamentally, the way to think about it is you start with the business impact metrics, and you start to think about at Medtronic, we look at, is this business demand constrained? Meaning, are the acquisition costs for customers rising, and are customers satisfied with alternatives? Or is it a supply constrained business where faster delivery at lower cost and more predictable quality, again, means that you have customers who are waiting, and the willingness to pay is not an issue. And if it's demand constrained, you tend to focus on internal efficiencies, to your earlier point, right? Those tend to be cost metrics. But what we've seen is that most of the time it's supply constrained, meaning you want to prioritize customer delight, with efficiencies being a natural byproduct from this act of scaling it, right? And that distinction fundamentally allows us to focus more on metrics like quality. What's the impact of downtime, right? What's the impact of a lost surgery to patients? And you can start to optimize and index the platform to try and solve for those, as opposed to primarily for focusing on, hey, how do we reduce the cost to serve to our customers, which helps our bottom line, but doesn't necessarily translate to commensurate value for our customers. That's kind of how we've started to look at metrics differently. Right?
And I'm glad you said customer delight, because when you're working in a hospital, and I had some personal experiences, my father in a hospital, whether it be the user or the patient environment, it has to be, you think of a clinical setting and things are so mechanical, there has to be some kind of enjoyment, some kind of immersion, some kind of an enjoyment, delight of wanting to use this and making your life easier, right? So I'm glad you mentioned that. And Roshi, I know in the last answer, your last question, you started touching upon the end customer and that value along with the quality. Anything else to add on top of what Mustafa and Vignesh said?
Well, when Vignesh was talking about this, what reminded me is, so people who work closely with me know that I'm a big fan of this Conway's Law, because I live that every day, actually. It basically says something to the effect that the products and solutions that we create as a company is going to reflect the internal communication structures, I think is what it says, that exist inside your company. It is very true. And oftentimes those communication structures are a reflection of your organizational structures, because we tend to do it in silo. So, but if you flip that a little bit and say, okay, we really look at, especially in medtech, I think we have been super siloed. If you look at what the challenges that are going on in our providers' spaces, they are struggling with, staff shortages, they are struggling with efficiency problems, they are struggling with cost problems. And we, as an industry, I don't think we have done enough to really say, okay, let's streamline, let's work backwards from what those customers need and figure out how to make their experience really seamless. And you mentioned this is true for providers, users, and patients. Yeah. And I think platform engineering has the ability to do so. So I was just making notes. Consistency in interoperability, right? Yeah. data, how do we manage data in terms of
Mm,
data privacy, data sharing, who has
yes.
access to data, but both from an IT perspective as well as from a regulatory perspective.
Yep.
Cybersecurity, how do we consistently handle cybersecurity? Or are we going to say, for this product, you do it this way, for that? We're not making it easier for our customers if we don't have a
Right.
portfolio-wide strategy that enables us to say, hey, cybersecurity is going to be managed this way at multiple layers, at the device
Mhm.
level, at the portfolio level, et cetera, et cetera. And think about user experience. We don't want every part of our organization creating a product that has a whole bunch of buttons and controls that operate one way and another part that operates in a different way. Look, when we are dealing with staff shortages and staff experience kind of challenges in the industry, those are the wrong things to do as an industry. And I think platform engineering can help bring that customer experience, unify that customer experience, where the same kinds of things do the same thing, right? The things that look the same, do the same kind of thing, and also elevate that customer experience on these kinds of operational aspects to the next level.
I'd like to add to that too, the consistency of testing, right? Your testing is more consistent as you're testing the platform, right? I think that's an important factor there, and it kind of eases that QA process with some of that as well. Okay, so we got. Go ahead. Sure,
the
please.
fact that as regulatory environments change across the world, it's easier to sort of adapt to that changing environment by putting it in guardrails at one place, and then automatically you sort of able to cascade that benefit across the board. Because that's another thing. These things evolve. They're not static, they're dynamic in nature.
Great. Well, with the few minutes we have left, I'm going to now jump into the elephant in the industry, right? What do we keep on hearing as we're reading things in the news, and I'm sure initiatives that all of your companies are driving, cloud strategy, AI. So when there's obviously a lot of buzz around all of this. So when we look around cloud and AI strategies, are different considerations that are needed when implementing a platform engineering strategy when you're looking at cloud versus physical? And then what impact may AI have on that as well? Roshi, I'm going to start with you on that question.
Yeah, so great one. There is a lot of buzz around it. In fact, in our company, there is a lot of focus on cloud and AI that really help to differentiate. We believe in the potential. At the same time, we acknowledge the risk and how we need to manage that risk and bringing responsible and ethical AI to the market. There's a lot of focus within our company. So I do think it's a little different. The concepts are similar, but there's a little difference. So first, just from a technical perspective, you have to have a clear strategy around the cloud. It starts with who your cloud service provider is. And when you think about platforming, there's a lot of capabilities that are already out there by cloud providers. Sometimes that is targeted capabilities that exist that accelerates healthcare innovations that we have to leverage. But we have to have a clear strategy as a company on whether you're going to be a single cloud, whether you're preferably a single cloud, whether you're going to be multi-cloud, et cetera, or is that regional? So that's number one. That I think is a big consideration. Second, I mentioned in the beginning that there is already a sub-discipline in cloud software engineering called platform engineering that focuses on the deployment and operations of software. That I think is a key component that's very different from traditional sort of medical devices or even on-premise systems. Needs to get a lot of attention. And the third thing that I would say is that cloud and AI, right? I mean, digital transformation and particularly AI is centered around data. So the question is, from a platform standpoint, do you have a data strategy, data management strategy, right? So data-related platforms, both in aggregating the data from different sources, managing them, securing them, protecting them, making it available to the right applications at the right time, is an important. If we think about that building block in cloud and AI, that's a really, really important building block that we need to get right. That is going to accelerate, what we can focus on building value, because the broader that data is, the more valuable the insights are going to be, right? Because again, not thinking about just kind of narrow siloed approaches, bringing data together is extremely important. I think those are some of the key things. Maybe the last thing that I would say is that building for operations and building for cost is an important consideration. Because that's how many components are you using on the cloud and when. If you don't have a clear sort of design for cloud philosophy and framework inside the company, and using some of the best practices that exist from the cloud industry. We don't need to reinvent that all. If we don't apply that consistently, we're gonna create products that are going to be really not viable from a financial perspective. It won't scale. It won't be financially viable. So those are important considerations.
Fantastic. Mustafa, Vignesh, anything to add?
Yeah, what I'll add is, Roshi touched upon data, right? One
Right.
important aspect of data that we need to keep in mind is both the cloud aspects as well as AI ML have the tremendous opportunity to convert data into actionable insights, right? And
Yes.
having a data strategy is only as good as having a strategy of how a company is going to leverage and provide those actionable insights back to customers to improve the benefits that customers can see from the products that we bring out every day, right? The integration elements that are afforded with cloud technologies, etc., the operational cost savings, and so on, can go back into creating these, tremendous data insights that can help make healthcare much robust and better than we are seeing it today. Right.
Great.
Yeah, I'm
sorry.
seeing a lot of companies struggle with that, right? Converting data into insights is tough. And I think that's where a lot of focus is needed from a platforming perspective as well.
Great. Vignesh, anything else from
I
your
think
end?
the way we look at it ourselves, and I would definitely encourage the audience to think about it, is while cloud and AI are definitely key buzzwords and important ones, and for good reason, it's important not to chase technology for technology's sake, but fundamentally define the consumption model that your customers have. Are they, for example, willing to go for a software as a subscription model? Is it actually a pay-as-you-go model?
Yeah.
And would you be able to sort of cater to those consumption models and your own business model via technologies like the cloud and the AI? And in these cases where that actually is a great fit, there's cases where it isn't. So always make sure that you sort of starting with that end in mind. That's something we've learned, and we've evolved a choice of technologies. AI, to Mustafa's point, is fundamentally looked at both internally for our own employee productivity, right, as well as externally as a means to try and convert what used to be in a age of universal data. I think we're now moving to a age of universal insights, but it's not as easy as it sounds on a webinar, right? There's a lot of degrees involved, and we've got to make sure those insights are contextual at the time the person needs a decision to be made.
Right.
Don't want sound bites sort of floating in the ether. I mean, that just causes cognitive overload. So there's a case to be made in applying that thoughtfully, right? But other aspects like making sure that you have security and compliance built in, because you have on-premise assets combined with cloud assets, AI running both on-premise and cloud, and making sure that you've created a comprehensive workflow and a security threat model to prevent malicious, nefarious actors from sort of taking this hostage is becoming even more critical than ever before. Because that's
it could be lots of
it
could be lots of complexities you're building into that platform, as you're mentioning, right? We have to be mindful of that. Sure.
Right.
Look, we're about 10 minutes to the top of the hour. Tried to weave in some of the questions from the audiences, and I think we've been covering as I've been monitoring the Q&A. And audience, thank you very much for the questions we've been having. And I want to end out on a high note here. You guys being industry experts and industry leaders, what does the future look like? Looking to the future, where do you see the greatest potential platform engineering to continue evolving? And then, what kind of advice can you give to the audience moving forward, especially some of the folks that haven't had this experience? And this is kind of piggybacking off one of the questions I'm seeing here, where the question is, in your experience, what's a good set of criteria to decide if platform engineering is needed or not for in-product, for inline product business, for product line or business, excuse me, I'm sorry. So I think it's what does the future look like? And are there types of advice you can give our audience as they're starting to try to kick this off or starting to investigate this type of strategy?
Sure. Happy to take a shot at that.
Yeah, Vignesh, go ahead. You're on a roll there, so let's keep going.
I would just say that let me start to your point at the outset by saying, in my view, and this is my personal view, this is not Medtronic's, is building application software without a platform is a bit like going about your day without electricity. It's theoretically possible to do that, just less effective and efficient. Because when was the last time you actually worried about where the power source was, about the transmission losses were? You were just focused on getting the job done. You plug it in, things happen behind the scenes. That's what a good platform, well done, does for you, right? And in terms of where we're going in the future, I suspect today we aren't there in healthcare. It isn't as simple as plugging an appliance into a socket and then making stuff happen and focusing on the value. We've got work to do, but I envision a future where we truly embrace this notion of patient-centric innovation. So you integrate patient feedback, real-time and real-world data, not just into the development process, but also being able to build more user-friendly devices and applications, because that fundamentally means you'll build end products that truly meet patient needs and surgeon needs in our case, and improve the quality of life for both of them. So they can actually look at each other in the eye. They're not typing into a computer like most of us notice when we go to our clinicians. They don't mean to do that, but they end up doing it. How do you drive this notion of clinicians truly being more patient focused as opposed to trying to have to enter data? Now, in terms of advice that I would give, I would really say start by clearly defining the value proposition of what your platform is, and also clearly articulate what it's not. Because again, trying to be everything to everyone is a slippery slope, right? Universal appeal, in my view, can lead to universal indifference in some ways. So agree early on with your stakeholders, simple metrics of success, both quantitative and qualitative. For example, in the case of the Able ecosystem and Medtronic, right? The key metric is, can you ensure that you're driving quantifiable improvements in experience, efficiency, and efficacy for the surgeons? And for Medtronic, is it driving the pull-through of our best-in-class implants, right? Which then contributes to the durability of our spine growth. Talent, make sure that you're identifying obstacle removers who strive for clarity but are willing to embrace ambiguity. That's another thing. And culturally, in the initial stages when things get rough, when you're building a platform, always escalate early, manage risk, because if you escalate late, you tend to assign blame. Right? So those would be that I would sort of want to know.
Great advice. Roshi, we have a couple minutes left. I want to go to you. The future's looking bright. How does the future look, and advice you can give to our audience?
I think there is tremendous potential, right? And I think it is almost our responsibility as an industry to solve some of these long-standing challenges that our customers have been dealing with disparate systems that don't talk to each other. Sometimes lack of standards or lack of adherence to standards, especially with a lot of legacy systems that are out there. The bridging of, call it traditional med tech with newer technologies that ride on top of it, that seamlessly integrate together between devices and digital and AI, ML. I think those are our potentials. And in all of them, in order for them to really come together, we really need a comprehensive platform strategy in any company. Otherwise, we're going to create, and I mentioned Conway's Law and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, we're going to create more and more silos. The last thing that we need is just a whole bunch of applications that are, point solutions that don't talk to each other, that operate differently. I don't think that's the right thing for our customers. I think platform engineering at scale has a huge opportunity to change healthcare, the way our clinicians operate, allow them to operate at the top of their license by doing things that are mundane and keep them consistent, automate them, do them really well at the bottom levels, if you will. That's our company's. I think that's our industry's responsibility. I very, very strongly that is one of the things that we need to strive forward as GE Healthcare. We're desperately trying to do that in every one of our strategy sessions. Advice to the teams, I would say, I mentioned business engagement. It won't be easy because of all the challenges that we described, but don't give up. Engage your business partners, make this a core part of the business strategy. Number two, I would say, start small. If you haven't done this, You're going to fail along the way. I've failed multiple times. I still fail, right? So start small and then learn from the experiences and then build scale. And please do not give up, because our patients and customers depend on us.
Yeah, excellent. And Mustafa, couple minutes left. Your perspective of the future and any advice you can give to our audience, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. And Roshi and Vignesh, right? Well said. Look, the future is bright. We need to ensure that it's not about technology. It's about the patient. It's about the longitudinal view and healthcare benefits that we can realize for the patient. So all of these enablers that we're talking about, right? AI, ML, miniaturization, all of those mega trends are enablers, and let's keep them as such, but not lose sight of the benefit that we are obligated to bring to our patients, right? That's really the future. Data should exist for the sake of data. Interoperability should not be a concern. The insights that I need as a patient, as I'm moving along, are there when I need them, right? That's the future. I think Roshi covered a lot of the watch outs and the advice. I will reiterate the one aspect of it, right, which is it's not going to be easy, right? It's going to be difficult. Don't lose sight of the value that it has the potential of bringing. Keep in mind all of the non-engineering aspects of it, right? Quality, manufacturability, serviceability, and again, the value to our patients, right?
Yeah.
That is what is that's the ROI that is being delivered through these technologies. So again, I'll reiterate, don't give up, right? It's not going to be easy, but we have an obligation to continue and not give up.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, we're right at the top of the hour. I wanted to create a conversation. I think the conversation was excellent. So thank you very much again for your participation, all the great insights and all the great feedback.